And welcome to the 6th season of Conversations in the Future of Work. I am your host, Rachel Cossar, and I am thrilled to kick things off with a big focus on the future of AI. And our first guest for this season is the incredible Malvika Jethmalani. And so, Malvika, I'll pass it over to you to share more about yourself.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. I'm Malvika. I'm a three-time CHRO and the founder of Acvis Group, which is a human capital advisory firm driven by the core belief that to win in the marketplace, businesses must first win in the workplace. And I'm also the recent founder of a community called Women Shaping AI. So that's my newest job.
That's incredible. And I am a totally honored founding member of that community. So we'll get into some of that in a little bit. I'd love to start just taking a step back, from your day to day. I know that you've had a big journey as a CHRO, and now you're leaning into some of these other spaces, advocacy and consulting. And so, just tell us a little bit more about that journey.
Yes. So when I left my last CHRO gig in the summer of 23, I took a step back to figure out what I wanted to do next and kind of, what is the best way for me to use my strengths and my skills going forward. And I've always wanted to build what I call a portfolio career. So doing a little bit of advisory and consulting work, doing some speaking and teaching, and then doing some writing and thought leadership. And that's exactly what I've been working on building over the past year. But also, a couple years ago, I started on this journey to kind of educate myself on everything AI when ChatGPT was just a few months old. And it became very clear to me very quickly that there's a glaring gender gap in AI that not too many people are talking about. And as a CHRO and with my HR background, I've always been someone who believes in inclusive and equitable work and workplaces. And when I saw that we have this gender gap in data science and AI, I started to kind of wonder what I can do about it. And of course, as a single, person, there's not much I can do to solve this problem. It's a systemic issue, and systemic problems require systemic solutions. And the best solution that I could think of is put together a community of really smart, talented leaders like yourself to put our heads together to try to make a dent in this problem.
Yeah, it's so interesting because so you just shared, right? Like that you took it upon yourself a few years ago when ChatGPT really came out, and educated yourself on how it, like the inner workings of it and all that. And that's really, so that's number one, that's really amazing. And number two, it's almost surprising to hear that, like, right, like my mind goes to like where is the gap? Like, why is this gap happening when these resources are like ChatGPT is easy to access, right? Like assuming you have a computer, which of course not everyone does, but assuming you do, like you can access even the free version and play around with it a little bit. So are you seeing, like, where are you seeing these issues happen, maybe from like the perspective of a workplace?
Yes. So first of all, I think it's important to understand that it's not just a usage gap. So I actually became aware of this problem the first time a few years ago when I read a book called Invisible Women, and this was even before the ChatGPT,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, blow up and craze, and when AI started to feature regularly in the news. And essentially, the gist of this book is that our entire world, whether it's business, education, the design of our cities, medicine, science, everything is designed based on data, right? We make most of our decisions based on data. But the problem is that a lot of the data that's used to make these decisions and design products and services and societies in general does not contain female data. It's mostly male data. So whether it's drug development or how cities are designed or how protective personal protective equipment is designed, or how car crash studies are done. It's all
Mm-hmm.
based on male data. And so then fast forward to now, where AI is a regular feature in business conversations, the gap occurs in a couple of ways. So first, we already know that there's not enough women in AI. Only about a third of AI professionals are women, and only 18% of AI researchers are women. But it's beyond this sort of participation crisis. Uh, Women are not enrolling in AI training programs. So women make up only 28% of enrollments in worldwide AI training programs. And that's really alarming, because employers now say that
Mm-hmm.
66% of employers say that they will not hire someone without AI skills, and 71% of employers say that they would rather hire someone junior with AI skills than hire someone senior without AI skills. And women also consistently lag in AI usage in the workplace compared to men in similar roles. And if you look at the roles that are most vulnerable to displacement by AI, like the administrative or clerical type jobs, women make up something like 94% of
Right.
that workforce, right? Some people have called those kind of the pink jobs. And then it's even beyond the workplace. So, AI image and video generators hypersexualize women. Deep fakes are
Mm.
much more likely to target women than men. So, those are some of the ways in which this gap materializes, not only in the workplace and beyond.
Yeah, it's interesting because it really is multifaceted, right? Like,
It is. It is. There was actually a Norwegian study done that also showed that there's a problem with AI usage in educational institutions as well.
yeah,
So when students are told not to use AI, women comply and men don't.
right. That's
And,
interesting.
if you remember the famous kind of TED talk by Reshma Sojani, the founder of
Hmm.
Girls Who Code, she talks about how we raise girls to be perfect and
Yeah,
boys to be brave,
yeah,
and that is how it manifests itself.
right. And there's so much trial and erroring that is required within, even just picking up an AI tool. Like, it can be so daunting when you have limited knowledge in that tool or space or whatever, and then like to take that first step to actually like try something out, right, can be um, really daunting in and of itself. So I remember you had said that like the stat that had really stood out to me was that like clerical kind of admin roles are typically or predicted to be some of the first to like really be replaced by AI, or people will be using these AI assistants, for better or for worse. And then right, and so then these women will be losing their jobs, and that's something that I thought that was particularly troubling. Um,
It is, and those populations are the ones where those individuals typically are not in a position to get their employer to sponsor
right,
them to go to a training program at MIT, and
right,
which costs
right.
thousands of dollars, or to even go and invest in their own upskilling.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Fascinating. So, like, what are your hopes for women shaping AI as a community?
So my mission for the community is, we exist to provide women with the knowledge, the influence, and the networks to not just be passive users of AI, but to be active architects of AI's future. So what do I mean by that? Many of us are using AI tools, including myself, but I talk to a lot of women who are not aware of the gaps that you and I just talked about,
Mhm.
and they are not aware of what they can do in their organizations or the communities or institutions where they live, work, and play, to ask the sort of second order questions
Right.
and to push for ethical AI and responsible AI and inclusive AI and AI for good. How do I even do that as a woman in my workplace and in my
Mhm.
community and in my educational institution? What questions do I ask? What policies and programs should I push for? When I'm evaluating a vendor, what do I look for? And so
Yeah.
my goal is to equip women with the knowledge to be able to do that, so that when they are invited to the decision making table, they can speak intelligently and appear knowledgeable about
Mhm.
these topics, because that is, I think, 80% of the battle.
Right. Absolutely. We're going to come back to something you just said in one of our next questions. But I wanted to change gears here a little bit and think about, what are some of the biggest opportunities that you're seeing with AI from the perspective of a people leader? And this could be in relation to everything you've just shared, right? Like maybe there are some ways that AI can actually be leveraged to encourage some of that inclusive conversation and really make sure everyone's getting their hands dirty. But I was just curious what, in terms of opportunities from that people leader's perspective, what comes to mind?
There's so many. I'll give you a couple. So, one of the areas where this comes to mind is leadership development. Leadership development
Mm-hmm.
is, we don't always see the greatest outcomes with leadership development investment. Sometimes because the programs are generic, they're not tailored to individual skill levels or learning styles. Other times because it's hard to pull leaders out of their day job to train them or to coach them to be better leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have tools that allow for that type of coaching to happen in a just in time manner, in a personalized manner. You're very familiar with this, given what you're building
Yeah.
at Virtual Sapiens. So I think that there are tools that are beginning to solve for that, which I'm very excited about. I think that's a huge opportunity. I serve on the advisory board of a company that does AI powered leadership coaching as well. So I think that's great. I also think that you just talked about this, right? We talked about bias, AI bias a lot, but there are AI tools that can help reduce bias. So in the HR world, the primary example that comes to mind is Textio. I recently read a case study about one of Textio's clients called Upwork, and Upwork used Textio Lift. Their goal was they wanted to reduce bias in performance reviews, but importantly, they wanted to provide actionable, high quality feedback to employees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is a problem that almost
Right.
every company is trying to solve, right? Nobody, 98% of HR leaders say that their performance management process is not working as expected. And so Upwork implemented Textio Lift, which is essentially designed to give writers, it uses AI to give writers recommendations on making their feedback fairer and more actionable. And what they found was managers who used the tool wrote 20% better quality feedback,
Mm.
and they spent less time writing their reviews.
Yeah.
And which manager doesn't want that?
Right.
So I think those are some opportunities, but I also think there are some gaps in terms of how leaders are implementing AI.
Right. And are those gaps kind of related to the ones you just mentioned, or
Somewhat. I think that, so what I'm seeing in my advisory work, I talk to a lot of CEOs and founders and often some board members as well, because I specialize in working with private equity backed companies. So I think two types of leaders are emerging. The first one is, how can we cut headcount as quickly as possible and take cost out of the P&L? And the second one is saying, how do we augment and enhance the work of our people, and how do we serve our customers better? And so I'll give you two examples of sort of what not to do and what to do.
Yeah.
I recently read a case study of a casino in Vegas. Interesting. That's where you and I met.
Yeah.
Not at a casino, at a
I know.
conference.
I'm like,
It was in
that
a
sounds a
casino.
lot more fun than, what we were actually doing.
So this was a case study of a Vegas casino that wanted to automate the drink ordering
Mm-hmm.
for customers who are playing the slot machines. And at first, it appeared to be a great idea to management, but this is a classic case of management sort of sitting in their ivory towers making decisions without going to the place where the work actually happens to see what is taking place. So if you know anything about slot players, you know that they can be superstitious. So if they don't get a hit on the first or second try, they tend to switch machines.
Yeah.
And so if you've ordered a drink through your slot machine and now you switch, suddenly you have chaos, right?
Right.
So management failed to understand two things. They failed to understand customer behavior.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing they failed to understand is the shape of the job, the roles and responsibilities of the job. So the server's job is not just to bring you drinks. The server's job is to create connection and camaraderie and make
Yeah,
you
of
feel
course.
warm and welcome. The
Hmm.
server's job is also often, especially in a Vegas casino, to flag when someone has been overserved and should no
Hmm.
longer be served,
Hmm.
or if they're acting inappropriately, and to maintain kind of order and safety
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
everyone, right?
Hmm.
And so to reduce that job to someone who just brings you a drink is dehumanizing the role.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so they didn't understand that the server, once they see you, they know that you're the one who ordered this drink, and they can bring it to you even if you switch machine. But they also failed to understand the other aspects of the job. And
Right.
so of course they had to reverse. Now the example of a company that has done AI, that is deploying AI really well, I think is IKEA. So IKEA, like many other companies, brought in AI chatbots to automate customer inquiries. And so their AI powered chatbot took over 47% of the customer inquiries.
Mm.
And that freed up a lot of customer service agents,
Right.
8,500 people to be specific. So what IKEA did is they took those 8,500 people and reskilled them
Hmm.
into virtual interior design consultant roles.
Right.
And by doing so, not only did they protect those jobs, they created a brand new incremental revenue stream of $1.4 billion from virtual interior design services. So I think IKEA is a great example of a company that understands that profit and people are not at odds with each other. In
Right.
fact, one drives the other.
Right. Yeah. Those are great examples, and it is, some of these decisions can seem like simple fixes or no brainers, right? Until you actually play the consequences out and then realize that it's actually not as simple. And there are many things, something can be a lot more complicated or a lot more complex than it might seem at face value, right? To your point with the waiters.
Absolutely.
Um, so something you said to me when we connected recently that I'd heard also at a conference we met at was about this, the way we build skills is over time and oftentimes having to go through some of the, less flashy parts of a job, right? And AI can take away a lot of that, but then what does that do to different pathways for development and like the development and movement of people through organizations, right? So how do you build talent without having them go through some of the, I think it was your word, the drudgery?
Yes, this is something I've been thinking about a lot.
Hmm.
In fact, I posted about it on LinkedIn to sort of tap into the collective wisdom
Yeah.
of my LinkedIn network recently, because I have not been able to come up with a good answer. So, when I was early in my career, I learned the business by doing the grunt work, if you will. I was in meetings, taking notes,
Hmm.
and getting exposure to these very senior people and learning just by observing. I was scheduling interviews, drafting policies and job descriptions, and reviewing contracts. And now AI can take over a lot, or if not all of that work. And
Right.
so, precisely to your question, how do we develop early career talent if that boring but important entry level work disappears? And it's not just in HR, right? Junior lawyers draft NDAs or basic, contracts. Entry level recruiters will, schedule back-to-back screening calls, and now you have HR tech that can completely automate the screening.
Hmm.
So the hypotheses that I have come up with are, we need to radically redesign early career roles, giving junior people, I think, more responsibility
Yeah.
sooner, pairing it with structured coaching. Also, we need to bring back apprenticeship learning. A lot of our jobs used to be apprentice type jobs. I think apprenticeship could make a comeback with AI sort of serving as the tutor,
Mm-hmm.
but not a substitute for human mentorship. I think
Mm-hmm.
job shadowing, simulations, whether it's using virtual reality or augmented reality, could be really helpful, and pairing that with sort of real time feedback loops. And I think that might replace, task based learning. And I think organizations need to invest more deliberately in kind of workplace academies or internal boot camps. But
Hmm.
also, I don't think that this is a problem that the corporate world can solve alone. I
Yeah.
think we will need governments and educational institutions to completely shift the paradigm of how they prepare young people for the future and to enter the workplace or to enter the world of entrepreneurship, whatever that path is. And I think that traditional path of go to college, get a degree, get a job, spend the first couple years doing the grunt work and then get promoted. I think that path is we will need to rethink that path, and we will need to start teaching young people earlier, for example, how to work with AI and how to work with agents, how to
Mhm.
think about using AI in a responsible and ethical manner, but also doing all of that while preventing cognitive atrophy. I think we are at
Yeah.
huge risk of
Yeah.
cognitive atrophy as a
Mhm.
species. And I think that our governments and educational institutions need to think about how they will continue to invest in helping young people learn those critical thinking skills and logical reasoning skills that you and I had the luxury to learn on the job in the
Yeah.
first couple of years, and these people won't have that luxury.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because I do think that, like, when I think about the most efficient ways and the most powerful ways of working with AI is when you're asking the right questions and you're being thoughtful about the information you're being fed and you're questioning that and you're going to direct sources and like really having this rigorous um, back and forth with the AI versus, taking everything that you're given at face value, right? But
Yes.
we know that like we see the way people digest the news, right? And myself included. You read something and you're like, oh my God. And then you find out that it's very misrepresented or whatever, And so I totally agree. And I do also worry about that, I think you put it perfectly, cognitive atrophy, right? Like how do we make sure because the skills around asking good questions, like that is an incredible skill from an interpersonal perspective and then also like
Mhm.
AI to human perspective, right? So we try to encourage that in the way that our clients use virtual sapiens because we don't want people to take everything our AI says at face value. We want people to take what our AI shows them about their behaviors and then like wonder why and talk to their coach about it or their peer and then they themselves are the ones who decide how they would like to move forward, right? Like we
Yeah.
could have the AI tell our users like this is how you should act. But I was
Mhm.
like, I don't think we want to do that for a number of reasons. I think we want the humans to decide for themselves which behaviors, are most in line with their intention, right?
Mhm.
We can
Yes.
help
And so much of it is going to be context dependent and
exactly.
situation and
Yeah.
business dependent.
Yeah. So yeah, but I also think you're right to go all the way back to like these academic and educational institutions, right? And it's interesting because some of them are like, well, we're just not going to allow AI. And you're like, well, definitely, I don't think that's the way. Like you have to figure out a way to incorporate it intentionally and in a way that is going to empower your students.
Yes. If you are in the business of preparing your students for the future
Yeah.
world of work, I don't think banning AI is the answer.
Yeah. No. um, great. So, the last question for today is around like yes, you have this incredible community again, which I'm so glad to be a part of, women shaping AI. But like, what would you beyond that, or using that as a basis? Like, what are some of your favorite ways to invite people? Women but also everyone, right? Because it's a scary space for a lot of people to get involved with the AI strategy within their company.
My favorite way to encourage people is to encourage them to learn and experiment. Whenever I discover a new AI tool that works for me or that's making my life easier, I try to share it uh, and spread the knowledge. So if you're within your organization, I would encourage you to understand what are the second order questions that I need to ask when I'm at the decision making table.
Mhm.
But in order to do that, you need to first understand your business in and out, right? Sometimes I feel like the more things change, the more they stay the same. And the
Mhm.
first principles have not changed. Understand your business in and out, understand your P&L in and out. Who are your customers? What is your company doing to serve your customers better? What should your company be doing? What does your competitive landscape look like? What are the strategic priorities? And then from there, that knowledge should then help you shape your AI transformation, whether it's you're leading it at the org level or within your team. So maybe start by documenting your key workflows, document the repetitive work within your little team or department that you're leading. Review, potential tools that your team could use. Maybe consider a week-long hackathon or two-day hackathon or something to allow each department to experiment. Give them a small budget, right, to do that, and create some meeting-free time and some focus time, some deep work time for them to do that, and then do some pilots and scope the work. To use those tools appropriately, obviously involve your legal department to make sure that you're taking data privacy and security into consideration, and that you're compliant with things like the EU AI Act or the California Privacy Act or GDPR or what have you, and review tools across the board. And I guarantee you will find areas within your team or your broader organization where you can augment the work of your people and kind of make it easier. And by doing that, you're also investing in your people's education, helping them reskill and upskill. And that is the number one thing that people are looking for from their employers, by the way. So if you read the latest report from McKinsey called Super Agency in the Workplace, the number one thing it highlights that employees are looking for is they're looking for more formal training and support from their employer on AI related matters.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Awesome. That's great. Thank you. So in closing, how can people, you've even in the past 25 minutes cited a number of really fascinating studies. So how can people follow more of your work, what you're reading, what you're posting about?
Follow me on LinkedIn. Follow Women Shaping AI on LinkedIn. I regularly post what I'm learning about, what I'm reading about, questions that are on my mind, like the question about, how do we bring early career talent up to speed? And I like to tap into everyone's collective wisdom. Or you can visit my website at atvisgroup.com. Or if you want to learn more about the community, it's womenshapingai.com. Or just send me a message on LinkedIn if you want to chat any or all things people and AI.
Awesome. Malvika, thank you so much for your time and for sharing so deeply with our audience. And of course, thanks to our audience for joining as always. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.